News, Arkansas. He joins us now on 365 Sports. Ashley, I know when you had a couple of thoughts with us earlier in the week, you feel like this is going to be okay. Have you changed at all, and has anything changed with your opinion about Scott and Baylor and Kentucky in the last maybe even couple of hours?
It is an hour-to-hour thing. Thanks for having me on. I think that a couple of days ago, I was confident he would stay. I still am leaning towards him staying for a lot of reasons. And family is a huge part of that. We've talked about that on the message boards. I know you guys have covered that well. But I do think it's more of a 50-50 proposition at this point. I think it's going to be decided by tomorrow morning. But neither outcome would surprise me. It's good for the message boards, certainly driving a ton of conversation. I would hate to say goodbye to him. I think he would, be better for Baylor Nation if he retires a Baylor Bear. But if he does make that choice, he wants a new challenge, a new mountain to climb, then I think we need to start looking at other options to take his place. And I would say either outcome is possible, but right now I'm still leaning on him staying at Baylor.
Actually, would he have tweeted out a picture of him and Eric Shiro if he was just going to pull the rug out from Baylor fans, though?
I don't think he thought that much into it. I mean, I think that was more of a tweet of, I'm not in Kentucky, like the rumors say. I'm here in Waco. So I think that was probably, how we should read that tweet. I don't think it has anything to do on whether he ultimately decides to stay or go.
This is Ashley Hodge, one of the partners, by the way, of 365 Sports and SicEm365.com on the Richard Carr Baylor Bear hotline right here on 365 Sports.
Ashley, at this point, if you're Mack Rhoades or anybody else involved on the Baylor side of things, is there anything that you're trying to offer up, or have you pretty much maximized what you can do at this point? It's just a Scott Drew life decision of, I know what I've got here. I've got everything at my disposal. But on the flip side, I just want this challenge. I want to go to the Alabama football, the Lakers, version of college basketball. Beyond that, is there really anything Baylor can do, you feel like, to tip scales one way or the other?
I don't think so. I think you nailed it. I think it's an itch, you might call it. I think from a basketball standpoint, based on what Baylor's doing, it's pretty equal. I mean, he might make a little bit more money at Kentucky. He may have a little bit more NIL at his disposal, but it's not enough to tip the scales one way or the other. The comfortable thing would be to stay. The risk would be to take this challenge on. And, I don't know what he ultimately decides, but he knows all the pros and cons of each location, and he knows it's going to be a fishbowl. He knows, his normal life as he knows it is probably over if he takes the Kentucky job. But I think it's all about whether he wants the platform, the challenge, and I think he's looking at it as a spiritual, decision. What is this going to give me a bigger platform to share, the Christian faith, or, do I just keep, building on the work that I've already done at Baylor? So I think to him, it's more a decision that lines up with, his spiritual faith. And I think that's going to be the root of what he decides.
If he stays at Baylor, and I feel like he will, and others on this show, we've discussed it ourselves, and so have you, Ashley. But if he does stay, what kind of a banger or hammer does that mean for Mack Rhoades, Baylor, the basketball program moving forward?
Yeah, I mean, I think it gives Baylor confidence that, he's going to be here until he retires. And I've shared this on the message boards. I don't think that's a long window. I think he probably views this as 5 to 7 more years. And then he's going to, do more of a Jay Wright, around the age of 60, call it quits and go on to, the next chapter of his life. But I think if he decides the next 5 or 7 years are better off at Baylor, then I think it's, certainly Baylor fans, I think, can be confident that he's going to stay during that duration. And then they can look, towards the future after that. But I think it says a lot about what Mack Rhoades has done, to make Baylor basketball, destination. I mean, even though he's won a national championship here, it's as far as fan support, we could do a lot of work, to still, grow our diehard base. I mean, we know it'll never be Kentucky. We know it'll never be some of these, schools that they treat basketball as a religion. But as I said earlier, I mean, that comes with some pros and cons. I mean, the pro is obviously the fan support. The con is you have no privacy, no normal life. I mean, it is treated like a religion. You're treated like a rock star, and that comes with some snares and toils as well. So I think he does that, and I think he's just weighing those things, and it'll be interesting to see what he decides.
Ashley, with that, you said, Baylor fans could do some more things. I would suggest that one of those things is pretty simple. Go to more road games, because Kentucky fans, other than they're just sheer numbers, of which there are. I mean, there's not a lot of T-shirt Baylor fans as there would be Kentucky basketball fans, obviously. But I think that's one simple thing. Like, if Baylor fans are like, how can we, make this a little more enticing? And I'm not saying, go to Utah and then go to BYU and follow them on the road, like the Grateful Dead or something. I'm just saying, when they play at TCU or somewhere like that, go.
Yeah, they do a good job of showing up when they play TCU. I'm sure they will at Houston. There are certain locations where they do show out pretty well. Not so much in Lubbock. But yeah, those are the areas like Oklahoma State, Lubbock, and I think NCAA tournament games are big. I think that Baylor Nation needs to make a commitment to follow the Bears as long as the road will take them at the NCAA venues, and even if that's not close to home, things like that would matter. But I don't think this decision is about that. I mean, we can never compete with a Kentucky as far as that's concerned, but we could do better. We could do better. So I think, growing our diehard base will be important, whether Scott Drew's the next coach, or Grant McCaslin, or Jerome Tang, or John Jacobs, or whoever it is. I mean, I think, we would do better to, continue to try to grow our fan base and support on the road and neutral sites. No doubt about it.
You brought up some former coaches who are now assistant coaches, Matt Driscoll, obviously Paul Mills. There's a ton of them out there. Would that be the short list? Or would they look elsewhere? Would that, because all of those guys understand what is successful, why it's successful at Baylor and Waco?
Yeah, I think those three that I mentioned are going to be heavily considered. I think they obviously get the culture, they get the fit, they know what it takes to have a championship program in Waco. So, I think it's a natural thought to think that those three would be at the top of the list. But I know Mack Rhoades is going to be. He has a list. He's already got, I'm sure, and I'm sure there's probably been some feelers being put out. If this happens, I mean, they probably already had that going with the Louisville situation. So I have no doubt that Mack Rhoades is going to act swiftly, and that it's not going to be a long, exhaustive process, that there will be another coach in place quickly if this does happen, if Scott Drew does choose to go to Kentucky.
All right, so your thoughts about how long can this linger before it starts to get a little bit, not toxic, but it starts to get to be a little bit more than you're kind of proud of the guy getting his name out for places like Kentucky?
I think it'll be decided by tomorrow. I think both Kentucky and Scott Drew have a very vested interest in having this chapter close by tomorrow. So I don't expect it to go longer than tomorrow.
Has he met with Kentucky yet, in your opinion?
Define met with.
Someone representing Scott Drew talked with Kentucky?
He was not on that plane that got 10,000 million or whatever you want to call flight tracker hits, but
right.
A phone call. Has he spoken with Kentucky, with Mitch Barnhart, but not necessarily have to meet with anybody in person?
Yeah, I'm almost certain that that's happened. So I don't know if there's been any details of contract, and those types of details have been worked out. But I do think that he's certainly had, pretty extensive conversations with Kentucky about the job at this point.
All right. Thank you very much. If, in fact, they did not have the Foster Pavilion and it was only still like maybe they're leveling ground around the Robinson Tower, if that wasn't up and running, even though they have work to do on it throughout the rest of the year and into the future, if that wasn't there, would this have been an easier decision for Scott to leave?
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't know. I mean, I think if the arena was still coming, that it might be, an equal equation, but I think he knows how special it can be. I know he knows that, what he's been working for to get that home court advantage, he now has. So, I mean, that's a plus for Baylor. I mean, it's, I think he's going to weigh that along with all the other considerations. So it's going to be an interesting 24 hours. Hopefully he remains a Baylor Bear, but we'll know soon.
All right. Thank you, Ashley. Appreciate your time. Ashley Hodge, who's very much a part of men's basketball when it comes to Baylor, travels with the team, travels to watch them wherever they might be. An insider for us on the site and also on this show on Baylor men's basketball.
Yeah, I don't think that there's a